Another day, another challenge, and this one was probably the hardest one I've done so far, and it got me killed a lot. Here's the idea: every time you get a kill, you've got to change your kit with the person that you've just killed. Sounds simple enough, but as you can imagine in a game of Battlefield, it's never easy to run over to a killed enemy, look at the ground, pick up their kit, while not being able to use your own gun to kill any other players. I did give myself a bit of a break though, so if I get a kill with my main weapon, I'm allowed to defend myself with my pistol until I can run over to the person I killed and obtain their kit. I think that's only fair. Sometimes in BF1, even when you find a dead player's body, it can be tricky to find their kit as they don't always land directly where the body is, but if I couldn't find it, and there was a few times that happened, then I just stuck with my pistol until I could get another kill. When I did die, I also tried to spawn in with different starting weapons to keep things fresh. It's actually an interesting experience having different weapons constantly. I went from snipers like the Martini Henry to assault weapons such as the MP18, or support weapons like the Shosho, or even medic weapons like the Mondragon Storm. It was quite a mixed bag, and you never know what you're going to get. What makes it just that little bit trickier is that everyone plays with different pistols, and what's worse, some players have their gadgets in different slots, so you kill a medic and you try to drop down a med pack, but you get out your syringe. First world problems of course, but it does add to the excitement, I guess. I had a few really nice runs here, but then some failures as well, so this video has a bit of both because often fumbling around looking for a gun on the ground got me killed. More than a few times in fact. While that's playing in the background, I wanted to talk about some Battlefield news. I did a video recently talking about some new weapons that are being added to BF1. One of those weapons was the Thompson Annihilator, an early version of the Tommy gun, and if you've got the CTE downloaded, you can actually give that weapon a test right away. It seems to be the only new weapon available for testing right now, and prepare yourself, it's got a hefty assignment before you can get your hands on it. 100 kills with assault primaries, and then 25 kills with pistols playing as assault. The Tommy gun's got a firing rate of 830 RPM and a 20 round magazine, but as with anything on the CTE, it is all subject to change. And it's a trench variant, which means it's going to be very good at hip fire, as the trench variants are fantastic at doing that job. It's actually very similar to the Automatico. It's got a slightly slower firing rate, but you use them both in a similar way, you just hip fire. The Automatico is crazy good up close, but you can fire off a few shots at medium range, often without even ADSing, and still get some kills. The Thompson is very similar, but it's a Tommy gun, so it just has that coolness about it. As well as new weapons, DICE and EA are giving away previous premium content for free. You may already know that certain maps from the They Shall Not Pass DLC have been made available for all, regardless of whether you own the DLC or premium. Nivelle Knights, Prix de Tahir, and most recently Rupture. DICE have taken this a step further, and now the entire They Shall Not Pass DLC is available for you to download for free on all platforms, and this is a limited time offer, but if you go to the Origin or the console store, download the DLC within the next few weeks, it then becomes yours forever for free. After this period though, if you don't claim the DLC, it's going to go back to its usual price. Just thought you might want to know that. I think that this is a great move, but it's not anything particularly new. DICE have done this for some time, especially with BF4. When BF4 was coming to the end of its life and the hype was about to begin for BF1, DICE started to release all of the BF4 DLCs for free. The idea is to keep the game going with fresh content for players who didn't get to experience the DLC the first time around, but also to keep DLC servers full when the player numbers inevitably fall. I'm all for this. Personally, any content that players can get for free is great, but some players, believe it or not, aren't so happy. If you paid for premium, or say that you paid individually for certain DLCs, I can see why you'd perhaps not feel super pumped that it's now being released for free. It's easy to think, well, I paid for it, but what was the point? I could have just waited and got it for free. Well, I think you need to look at that a bit differently. Lots of products depreciate in value, for instance a car or any piece of hardware or electronics. And when you buy premium, you pay for the DLC, but you also pay to play it when it releases on day one. Let's say I ordered a brand spanking new car and pick it up on day one of release, I'll pay a certain price premium for it. If, however, I buy that same car 2 years down the line when the newer model is just about to release, then I'm going to pay significantly less. I think that's just the way of the world. I understand though that this is a bit different to that. It's a digital product, but the theory I think is the same. We're on the cusp of the inevitable Battlefield 2018 announcement, and as such, BF1 is coming to the end of its cycle. I think it makes sense to get as many players as possible playing all of the content. If I paid for premium and I get 2 years worth of content, but then it's given to everyone for free, I still feel as though that I got my money's worth. Just my opinion. I think to keep player numbers high and to keep BF1 going while we wait for the next game, it's a no-brainer. Also, the more players we get, the better. In fact, it's fair to say that some players who haven't experienced They Shall Not Pass could load the game back up again to play it now because it's free. That's got to be a good thing in my book. As the next few months go on, I think that we'll see a few more DLCs, especially the earlier ones released for free. Just like the BF4 cycle, by the time the next BF game is released, I fully expect all of the BF1 DLCs to have been offered for free at some point. Speaking of BF4 DLCs though, if you were one of the unlucky ones that missed the boat when the DLCs were offered up for free a few years ago, you can now also claim Dragon's Teeth for free if that's something that interests you. I've gone back to BF4 recently and it's still a brilliant game, and Dragon's Teeth was arguably one of the better DLCs released. New guns, 4 maps, but also Chain Link, which is a really interesting game mode that I'd love to see return. It's weird, but until you go back to BF4, you forget how good that game actually was. Much more teamwork involved than in BF1. Now, I recently jumped back into BF4 and BF3 for that matter, and sure, they're not perfect, but they still both play really well, and it's cool to jump back on them for some nostalgia. You do notice how far the netcode and general hit registration has come though in Frostbite engine games, especially if you play BF3. I can't believe how much it's improved in that respect. The gunplay makes up for it though. I do miss my M16A3. If BF3 was remastered with all of the netcode improvements from BF1 and 60Hz servers, I think I'd play it all the time. I don't think that'll ever happen, but I'd be all for it. One thing I don't miss though is all of the lock-on weapons from BF4, and I do enjoy the more analog nature of BF1. That being said, I think we miss some of those only in Battlefield moments in BF1. In BF3 and 4 you had crazy Renzooks. Players would spend an insane amount of time trying to land one of those. I still remember when the first one appeared online and it was like, that's just insane. It was free advertising for the game as well. Quite a big deal back then, and then you had moments where you could RPG planes from a crazy distance with an insanely well placed rocket, or perhaps you just wanted to mess around with C4 and launch a tank onto a building. I know that isn't strictly PTFO, but there were some times when you just wanted to have fun. There was just so much room for insane moments in BF4 and BF3 compared to BF1. Sure, you can still get some nice kills, perhaps taking out tanks or even planes. Now you've got the anti-air rocket gun, but it doesn't quite have the same effect for me. I'd love to see the next Battlefield game introduce some of those mechanics again, but only the ones that required a lot of skill to pull off. BF1 is definitely more of a solo game too. I think teamwork was much more important in BF4. Now, we mentioned BF1 coming to the end of its life as the new game nears a reveal. An EA employee called Jim Hedge said in a tweet recently, "Really excited for the new Battlefield to be revealed at EA Play in June. It's jaw-dropping." Now, I'm no detective, but that sounds to me like the game will be fully revealed at EA Play in June. That doesn't mean that we won't get a trailer or something beforehand. We certainly did with BF1, and even going back to BF4, but EA Play is a big deal for EA these days. A regular event held each year just before E3. It's a big event that they use to show off all of their new big titles. It would of course be the perfect place to showcase the game, but you have to assume that it would be a big deal at EA Play, even if it was revealed beforehand. BF1 gameplay was shown off at an EA Play event too, although they did have an earlier reveal event beforehand. So this game is coming to an end now, and I really enjoyed this challenge, despite it being pretty hard. It was frustrating at times knowing that I could have killed multiple enemies, but I was forcing myself to grab a different gun. It did keep me on my toes though, and it's pretty interesting to see what weapons and combination of gadgets that other people play with, because on occasion you might find a combination that you've never played with and you end up thinking, you know what, that works pretty well. Annoyingly, I didn't record the scoreboard at the end of the game, apologies for that, but I ended up around 42 for 22. Not a bad score considering how often I had to change weapons here. And of course, I tried to PTFO as much as possible. And that's all for today, folks. If you enjoyed the video, do let me know with a thumbs up and a comment below. If you didn't like it, dislike it, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.